I never imagined I would start that day feeling like an intruder in my own family. But the moment I stepped into the entrance hall of the Magnolia Oaks wedding estate in Charleston, South Carolina, the air itself felt heavier. Maybe it was the humidity mixing with the late summer heat, or maybe it was the weight of the unspoken tensions I had been carrying for years. Either way, I felt it before anything happened, a quiet tightening in my chest, like my body already knew something I didn't. The marble floors gleamed under soft golden lights, the kind designed to make everything look like a fairy tale. People brushed past me in elegant dresses and crisp suits, holding champagne flutes and tossing around small talk about the ceremony. My younger sister Lily had chosen the kind of wedding that belongs in magazines' soft blush tones. Towering floral arrangements, string quartet playing somewhere in the distance. And I was determined, truly determined, not to let my complicated relationship with our mother cast a shadow over Lily's big day. I clutched the small envelope containing my handwritten card and stepped toward the reception desk where the guest list check-in was happening. My palms were already sweating from nerves. I told myself it was normal, weddings make everyone emotional, right? It didn't mean anything. The receptionist, a young woman with a sleek bun and a headset, smiled brightly as I approached. "Hi there, name, please?" "Emily Harrison," I said with a soft smile. "Sister of the bride," she typed something, paused, tilted her head. Her smile twitched, struggling to stay in place. She typed again, slower this time, as if carefulness would change the outcome. "Harrison." I began spelling, but she lifted a quiet hand, asking for a moment. And then it happened. Her fingers stilled. Her posture locked. Her face drained just enough for me to notice. The micro-expression people have when they recognize a mistake, except this time I was the mistake. "Sorry," she whispered, clearing her throat nervously. I'm not seeing your name on the list." A few guests behind me shifted, leaning subtly, listening. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like the floor had tilted. For a second, I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "What do you mean?" I forced a chuckle. "I'm the bride's sister." "I understand," she said, now flustered, clicking through screens. Maybe it's under another spelling?" "It's Emily Harrison." My voice cracked in the middle of my own name. She swallowed, her cheeks reddening. It's really not here. I felt eyes on me. Curious eyes, judging eyes. Eyes that enjoyed watching a scene unfold that wasn't theirs. My breath caught like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed my lungs. My name, missing. Not forgotten, removed. I didn't know how I knew that so instantly, but I did. Something deep inside me whispered there was no mistake. "I'm sorry," she said again softly. Those two words hit harder than anything else that could have come next, because they confirmed something was wrong, terribly wrong. The receptionist waved over her manager, who scanned through the digital list and then through the printed one. Page after page after page, nothing. "Are you sure you're at the right venue?" he asked, trying to be polite. "My sister is Lily Harrison," I said, my voice trembling now. "She's getting married here today." "Oh, Lily Harrison," he said, and I watched recognition brighten his expression. "Yes, of course, the bride, but your name?" "I'm afraid it's truly not listed as a guest." The words flammed into me with all the subtlety of a brick. I suddenly became painfully aware of everything, the way my heels dug into the floor, the fluttering of laughter from guests walking past, the whisper of chiffon dresses brushing against expensive suits, the soft hum of the string quartet playing some romantic classical arrangement in the distance. Life kept moving while I stood there, humiliated and exposed. I wanted to disappear. Before I could say anything else, a staff member approached quietly, an older man with kind eyes and rolled-up sleeves, clearly part of the catering team. He leaned closer to me, gently touching my elbow as if sensing how close I was to breaking. "You belong here," he whispered discreetly. "Come with me." I didn't know why I trusted him, but at that moment he felt like the only lifeline keeping me from drowning. He led me past the reception desk, through a side hallway scented with garlic and roasted herbs from the kitchen. "Some families," he murmured, "don't always know how to treat the ones who care the most." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. "Thank you," I managed to say. He nodded. "Let me find you a seat." He guided me to a table in the far back of the reception hall, close enough to the kitchen doors that I could feel the occasional burst of warm air when servers passed through. It was the kind of table reserved for distant relatives or awkward plus ones. A table where no one would notice if you vanished. I sat down quietly, smoothing my dress to hide the trembling in my hands. From where I was, I could see everything: the floral centerpieces, the glowing chandeliers, the perfect dance floor. And somewhere in that beauty was my sister, the person I used to share secrets with under our blanket fort, the person who once said she wanted me as her maid of honor long before she ever met the man she would marry. When she finally appeared in the crowd, floating in her elegant dress, my breath caught. She was stunning, radiant, happy, but when her eyes finally found me from across the room, sitting in a dimly lit corner, her expression faltered. Just for a fraction of a second. Her smile slipped, hesitation clouded her face, and then she quickly turned away as her new in-laws pulled her into a conversation. That moment told me everything the guest list had not. Something wasn't a mistake. Something was intentional. As I sat there, feeling the sting of isolation creep under my skin, the past flashed through my mind, uninvited memories I had tried so hard to bury because confronting them meant reopening wounds my mother insisted were merely misunderstandings. Like the day I found the receipts, hotel stays, gifts, evidence of my father's long affair. The day I confronted my mother, expecting shock or grief, and instead received a cold, sharp glare that carved itself into my memory. "You don't speak about this again, Emily, ever." The truth became a silent battlefield inside the house, and I have been losing ever since. A laugh echoed through the room, a warm, joyful sound. But inside my chest everything was tight, burning, shrinking. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stay or run. I didn't belong at this table. I didn't belong in this shadow. But this was my sister's wedding. And no matter how my mother felt about me, Lily and I had shared a lifetime before the lies began tearing us apart. So I stayed. The string quartet transitioned into a gentle romantic tune as champagne was handed out. The reception lights dimmed slightly, signaling the shift into the formal part of the evening. And though I didn't know it yet, everything was about to unravel in ways none of us were prepared for. I tried to steady my breathing as the lights dimmed more fully. The soft clinking of silverware faded while guests turned toward the front stage where the DJ announced that the wedding party would soon enter for the formal introductions. My hands still trembled slightly, and I pressed them into my lap to hide it. From my distant corner, I could see everything but be seen by no one, a perfect metaphor for my place in the family. A waitress approached with champagne, pausing when she saw the way my eyes looked wet, but determined not to spill. She smiled gently and set the glass in front of me without a word. It was a small kindness, one I appreciated more than she could ever know. The doors at the far end of the room opened, and the bridal party entered with cheers and applause. Bridesmaids glided in with coordinated smiles, groomsmen strutted in with playful energy, and everyone laughed at the dramatic spins and silly gestures. Then came Lily and her husband, Ethan. When they entered, the crowd rose to their feet, cheering loudly. Lily looked radiant, glowing with joy. She truly was beautiful, her dress shimmering softly in the lights, her sweep of blonde hair catching every glimmer, her smile the kind that once made me smile just by looking at her. But there was a shadow behind her eyes, even from a distance, a trace of discomfort, a flicker of guilt. And I knew it had something to do with me. As the applause died down, guests settled into their seats. I remained at my lonely back table, taking a sip of champagne that tasted bitter, not from the drink but from everything I felt. A few minutes later, Lily slipped away from Ethan and began moving through the tables greeting guests. I watched her get closer, hugging people, laughing, thanking them for coming. When she finally reached my table, she hesitated. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I answered, forcing a smile. Her eyes darted toward the kitchen doors, toward the floor, anywhere but directly at me. "I saw you sitting back here," she murmured. "Didn't realize they put you so far." "Lily," I said gently, "my name wasn't on the list." Her breath hitched. Her cheeks flushed. She looked like a kid caught slipping a cookie from the jar. I don't know what happened," she lied, and even she seemed embarrassed by how unconvincing she sounded. "You didn't know?" I asked quietly. She swallowed hard. "I thought they fixed it." "They?" I repeated, knowing exactly who they meant. Lily flinched. She looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Mom said there was confusion with the seating. Something about final numbers." She ran a shaky hand down her dress. "I didn't want to cause a scene before the ceremony." "I see," I whispered. "But I did see. Completely." She leaned closer. Please don't be upset tonight. I need everything to be perfect." There it was. The phrase that had defined my entire childhood. Don't ruin things. Don't make trouble. Don't disrupt the perfect image. I nodded slowly because arguing would only make things worse for her. "It's your wedding day," I said. "I'm not here to cause problems." Her relief was immediate, too immediate, like she had been afraid I'd expose something or confront someone. She touched my shoulder briefly. "Thank you, really." Then she moved away, disappearing into the sea of guests. As she walked off, I felt something in my chest sink deeper. She wasn't a villain. She wasn't cruel. She was scared of conflict, scared of disappointing our mother, scared of being seen as less than perfect. Just like I had been once. Before I learned perfection was a cage. The appetizers came out shortly after: mini crab cakes, bacon-wrapped scallops, tiny tartlets. None of it mattered. My appetite was gone. Then I saw my mother enter the room. She looked breathtaking, as always. Not beautiful constructed. Every hair meticulously arranged, makeup flawlessly applied, posture flawless. She wore a deep navy gown that shimmered with tiny crystals, looking like someone who never made a mistake in her life. Her gaze swept the room with the confidence of a queen surveying her kingdom. When her eyes brushed over me, she didn't pause, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge me at all. She simply looked through me, the same way she always did when she didn't want anyone to remember I existed. That hurt more than the guest list. The DJ announced the best man's speech next, and the room quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," the best man began with exaggerated enthusiasm, lifting his glass. "If there's one thing I admire most about Lily's family, it's their loyalty. You can always count on them to stick together, to protect each other, to keep things where they belong, especially secrets." A few guests laughed politely. My pulse froze. Secrets, where they belong, loyalty. Those were my mother's favorite words. Her weapons. I looked toward her. She was smiling, relaxed, unbothered. I felt heat rise in my chest. The best man continued. "Some families are blessed with daughters who always know their role, who don't stir the pot, who don't cause unnecessary drama." My blood turned cold. This speech wasn't written by him. This was scripted, coached, fed by her. I felt my nails dig into my palm as he went on, praising Lily for her grace and respect for tradition, praising families who know how to stand united. I knew exactly what he meant. He was telling the room that unity requires silence. That loyalty meant burying truth. That families were to be curated, not lived. He was saying I was the problem. I didn't remember standing up at first. I didn't remember walking toward the back exit. I just remember the thundering of my own heartbeat and the roaring in my ears. Outside the reception hall, the warm night air hit me like a slap. The sky was streaked with orange and purple as the sun sank behind the trees. The cicadas hummed loudly, filling the silence I struggled to breathe through. I leaned against the wall, covering my face for a moment. Why? Why today? Why like this? Footsteps approached. Someone stopped a few feet away. I lowered my hands and saw my mother standing there, one hand gracefully clutching her small clutch bag, her smile thin and brittle. "Emily," she said, her voice cold honey. "I hope you're not planning to make a scene." I blinked. "A scene? You removed my name from the list." She shrugged lightly, as if discussing whether. "Some situations call for discretion." "Discretion?" I repeated, disbelief cracking through my voice. "This is Lily's wedding. I'm her sister. You've made things complicated enough over the years." Her tone was so casual, so controlled, like she had rehearsed this moment. "I couldn't risk you causing more trouble." "Trouble?" I stepped closer, anger rising, but not uncontrolled, more like a cold, sharp clarity. "Because I refused to lie for you. Because I found out Dad was cheating? Because I didn't pretend everything was perfect?" Her eyes flashed, just a flicker, but enough to tell me the truth. "Yes," she whispered. A single word, a single confirmation, a single dagger. I felt something shift inside me, not break, not collapse. Shift, like a door I had been pushing on for years finally unlocked. "I'm not the enemy," I said softly. "You don't belong here tonight," she replied with that same cold honey voice. "This day is about perfection and you don't align with that." There it was. The phrase I feared hearing again. "You don't belong here." The same words she once told me when I was 17, crying in my room after overhearing her arguing with my father about the affair. The same words she said when I asked why I had to lie for them. The same words she whispered at Thanksgiving 2 years ago when I dared mention therapy. The same words she had built her entire parenting philosophy on. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm staying," I said firmly. "I'm here for Lily, not for your perfect little show." She pursed her lips, clearly annoyed that her control wasn't working. Before she could say anything else, the kitchen door swung open and Ethan's mother stepped out, greeting guests nearby. My mother instantly changed expressions, putting on her charming social mask, leaving me in the shadows of the hallway as if I were a ghost she forgot to bury properly. When she left, I stood there alone, breathing in the humid air, letting the truth settle. She had erased me, and Lily had let her. But the night wasn't over, and the truth always finds its way to the surface, even in families that work so hard to bury it. I stayed outside longer than I meant to. The sounds of the reception drifted through the walls, laughter, clinking glasses, the upbeat music that signaled it was time for dinner. My chest tightened with each reminder of the celebration happening without me, but I refused to run. Not again. Not this time. When I finally walked back inside, I chose a different route, avoiding the main entrance, slipping quietly through a side corridor until I reached the back of the reception hall. Guests were lining up for the buffet as servers moved swiftly between tables. The moment I returned to my seat, my cousin Rachel slid into the chair beside me. Her red hair bounced as she leaned forward. "What was that about?" she whispered urgently. "I saw you walking out. You looked pale." I shook my head. "Just needed some air," she frowned. "Emily, what's going on? Why are you sitting back here? Why weren't you at the rehearsal dinner? Why weren't you in any of the family photos?" I inhaled shakily. "I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't told about the photos." Her face softened. "That's cruel." I shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, but Rachel wasn't fooled. She squeezed my arm in silent support. It was one of the few gestures that made me feel like I belonged anywhere tonight. Before I could say more, the DJ called everyone back to their seats for the official speeches. I straightened automatically. Some years of family training you never really shake. The maid of honor, Lily's best friend from college, gave a heartfelt speech about sisterhood and loyalty. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her stories about late-night heart-to-hearts only highlighted the glaring absence of my relationship with Lily over the last few years. When she finished, the room clapped enthusiastically. Then the DJ announced, "And now the bride's mother would like to say a few words." My stomach dropped. My mother approached the microphone with the grace of someone who had rehearsed this moment for months. The room quieted instantly. She held her wine glass elegantly between manicured fingers. "I want to thank you all," she began, her voice warm and smooth like silk draped over ice. "Tonight is a celebration of love, family, and unity." I nearly choked. She continued, "Lily has always been a beacon of grace in our family. She has upheld what it truly means to honor where you come from, to cherish your roots, and to protect the people who raised you." Her eyes flickered just briefly toward me, not enough for the room to notice, but enough for me to feel it like a slap. She was painting a perfect portrait, framing Lily as the golden daughter who respected the family's image. A daughter who didn't question or challenge. A daughter who didn't disrupt harmony with inconvenient truths. A daughter unlike me. People raised their glasses. My mother smiled like she had just sold the audience a flawless dream. As everyone toasted, I stared at my champagne flute. Small bubbles floated to the top, each one rising, like something trying to break free. I wasn't sure how much more I could take. Dinner began shortly after, but my appetite was gone. The whole room felt like a theater performance I hadn't rehearsed for, a performance I wasn't meant to be part of, except maybe as the villain backstage. Halfway through dinner, Lily appeared at my table again. She looked anxious, her fingers twisting the ribbon around her bouquet. "Emily," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Mom said you confronted her." "I didn't confront her," I said calmly. "She found me." "And told me I don't belong here." Lily winced. "She didn't mean it like she did," I cut in gently. "And you know that." Her eyes glistened. "I'm sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have insisted your name stayed. I just didn't want to fight with her the week of the wedding." A familiar ache settled deep in my chest. "I know," I said softly. "That's the part that hurts most." She sat down beside me, lifting the hem of her dress off the floor. "I wanted today to be beautiful," she whispered. "And I knew that if you and Mom were in the same room, something might happen." "And something did," I said quietly. "But not because of me." She looked down. "I'm sorry." Her apology was real, fragile, and too late. I reached out, taking her hand. "I'm not here to ruin your night. I'm here because I love you." Her lip trembled. "I know." A bridesmaid approached, calling Lily back for the cake-cutting tradition. Lily squeezed my hand once more before slipping away, leaving me with a storm of conflicting feelings, love, betrayal, sadness, and something else I couldn't yet name. As the crowd gathered for the cake cutting, I stayed seated, watching from afar. The room erupted in laughter when Ethan smeared a small bit of cake frosting on Lily's nose. She giggled, and he kissed her, and everyone clapped. The romantic moment stung not because of jealousy, but because of the sharp contrast between the happiness in the room and the tension bruising my heart. When people began drifting back to their tables, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Ethan, the groom. His face was sympathetic, hesitant. "Emily," he said softly, "can we talk for a second?" I nodded, standing and following him to a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the garden. Fireflies sparkled outside in small bursts of light. "I'm really sorry about tonight," he began. "I didn't know." "Everything." "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. He exhaled. Your mom talked to me and Lily a few days ago. She said there were complications with the guest list. She said you might not come because of past issues. She said it was better to avoid unnecessary drama. My throat tightened. She told you I wasn't coming? He nodded slowly. Lily didn't want to believe it. But when your name wasn't on the final list, she panicked. She wanted to fix it, but your mom said you probably caused tension if invited. Last minute, a bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. So she erased me because she wanted a perfect picture. I shouldn't have listened, Ethan admitted. I should have pushed Lily to double check. But I wanted to make sure she stayed calm this week. I looked out the window where fireflies blinked like warning lights. It's okay, I said, though it wasn't. Thank you for telling me. He hesitated. Lily really does love you. I know, I whispered. But love isn't always enough to stand up to someone like my mom. He nodded, sadness clouding his expression. We walked back to the hall together, and as soon as I stepped inside, the DJ called out again. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to open the floor for anyone who'd like to offer a toast to the bride and groom. A few people stepped forward. A groomsman made a joke. An aunt gave a sweet but forgettable tribute. Then I heard my name. Emily Harrison? My body froze. The DJ smiled. Would you like to say a few words? The bride and groom would love to hear from family. The room turned toward me. Hundreds of eyes. Hundreds of expectations. Hundreds of assumptions. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, unsure, silently pleading for me not to tear the fragile facade apart. Ethan watched me carefully. My mother, seated at the head table, stiffened her wine glass suspended in the air. I swallowed. I could walk away. I could sit down. I could pretend none of tonight happened, or I could speak. Speak with honesty, with grace, with the truth disguised as gentleness, with a courage I had buried for years. My legs moved on their own, carrying me toward the microphone. When I reached it, the room fell into a thick, expectant silence. I took a breath. My name is Emily, I began, my voice soft but steady, and I'm Lily's sister. A faint ripple went through the crowd, people realizing for the first time who I was. I smiled gently. And tonight, even though I almost wasn't here, I'm grateful to stand in front of you. My mother's jaw tightened. Lily covered her mouth, eyes shimmering. I continued. Families aren't perfect. Sometimes we're messy. Sometimes we hide things. Sometimes we hurt the people we love without even realizing the damage. A murmur spread through the room. But love, real love, doesn't come from perfection. It comes from choosing each other even when things aren't easy. Lily burst into quiet tears. Ethan placed an arm around her. I went on, letting the words flow from a place deeper than anger. And Lily, you have always been someone who shines even in the darkest corners. You're brave, even when you don't feel it. And I'm proud of you truly. She cried harder. I smiled, a small, bittersweet smile. So here's to truth, to forgiveness, to families that are learning how to become better, and to choosing love, even when it's complicated. I raised the glass a server had slipped into my hand. To Lily and Ethan. The crowd echoed the toast. Some stood, some wiped their eyes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't vindictive. It was honest. As I stepped away from the microphone, something inside me felt lighter, not healed, not fixed, but freed. My mother stared at me with a cold, furious shock frozen on her face. But Lily ran toward me and wrapped her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Em. When she pulled away, I touched her cheek. Enjoy your night, I said softly. You deserve it. And with that, I walked back toward my lonely table, my heartbeat slow, steady, clear. Something inside me had shifted for good. When I sat back down, the room felt different. even though nothing visible had changed. The chandeliers still glowed with that warm golden light. The string lights still wrapped around the beams and columns. The band still played romantic songs, and guests still talked and laughed and clinked their glasses. But something inside me had shifted, and suddenly I could see everything more clearly. People kept glancing toward me, curious, thoughtful, sometimes even a little guilty, as if they'd just stumbled onto a part of a story they were never meant to hear. Rachel caught my eye from across the room and gave me a tiny thumbs up, the kind you give when words feel too small. I took a long breath and let it out slowly, feeling my heartbeat finally start to calm. After a few songs, the dance floor filled. People swayed and spun, dresses flaring and shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. Lily and Ethan moved together in the middle, wrapped up in a moment that actually felt real, not staged. She rested her head on his chest, and he held her close, kissing her hair. For a second, I felt that old ache of nostalgia, memories of when love felt simple, before adult life turned everything into a negotiation between truth and comfort. "Mind if I join you?" a voice said beside me. I looked up and saw my father standing there. He looked older than I remembered, not just in the lines on his face, but in the way his shoulders slumped when he thought no one was watching. The man who once tried so hard to impress everyone now looked like someone who carried entire years of regret across his back. "Sure," I said quietly. He sat down, folding his hands in front of him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The band started playing a classic love song, and couples shifted their hold on each other. "I heard your speech," he finally said. "It was honest. That was kind of the point," I replied gently. He nodded, staring at the tablecloth. "You've always been that way. Honest, even when it wasn't convenient." I tilted my head slightly. "That's one way to put it." He winced, but he didn't try to defend himself. Maybe he was finally tired of pretending. "I didn't know your name was missing from the list," he added. "If I had known, I would have fixed it." "I know," I said. "This has Mom's fingerprints all over it." He looked pained. "Your mother has a particular idea of how things should look. She always has," I answered. "And you let her make me the problem when I found out you weren't who she said you were." His eyes filled with something raw. "I know I failed you. I failed both of you. I thought keeping things quiet would protect you. It didn't," I said softly. "It just made me feel crazy for seeing what no one else would admit." He swallowed, his voice low. "You weren't crazy. You were right." The words came out so simply that they stung me more than any long apology could have. I stared at him for a moment, feeling a strange mix of validation and sadness. I had waited years to hear someone in this family say that. Years of doubting my own memory, my own perception, my own worth, because one person had decided her version of reality mattered more than the truth. "Thank you," I whispered. He looked at me like he wanted to say more, tell me what really happened, confess all the details, but instead he let out a long breath and glanced toward the head table. "Your mother doesn't know how to handle anyone who won't play along," he said. "But that doesn't mean you're wrong for refusing." I followed his gaze. My mother sat perfectly composed, laughing at something someone said, like the evening was unfolding exactly as she had planned. But there was a tightness around her eyes now, a strain in her posture. She kept glancing around the room like she'd lost control of a script she'd spent years writing. "She's never going to admit it," I said. "She'd twist this into me being dramatic again." "She probably will," he agreed quietly. "But that doesn't mean you have to keep playing the part she assigned to you." I thought about that. How many times I'd accepted roles that didn't fit me, just to keep the peace. The difficult daughter. The dramatic sister. The troublemaker who wouldn't just smile for the Christmas photo and pretend everything was fine. Maybe I didn't have to hold those roles anymore. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course. When I found those hotel receipts, when everything came crashing down, did you ever think about telling me the truth yourself?" Or did you just hope I'd forget? He stared at his hands for a long moment. I thought you'd hate me, he said finally. And I was selfish. I wanted you to still see me as a good father. So I let your mother control the narrative. I let her tell you I was just under stress, that you misunderstood, that it wasn't your place to ask questions. I told myself it was for the best. It wasn't, I replied, but there was no anger left in my voice, just a tired sort of clarity. You could have told me the truth. I would have been mad, but at least I know you respected me enough to be honest. You're right, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. Not in the way that's meant to make you feel guilty for being hurt, just sorry, as a man who made a lot of weak choices. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Thank you for saying that, I murmured. We sat there for a while in silence watching the dance floor. The band shifted to a slower song. A few older couples swayed nearby, holding each other with the kind of tenderness that only comes after weathering storms. I'm glad you came, my father said. Even if the night didn't start well. I'm glad I came too, I said, surprising myself by how much I meant it. I needed to see things clearly. Later in the evening, when the bouquet toss and garter tradition ended and people started drifting toward the bar or the patio, the energy in the room shifted again. The loudest parts of the celebration were over. What remained was softer, more honest, the kind of conversations people have when the performance wears off. Rachel came to hug me goodbye. A few relatives I barely knew squeezed my hand and whispered things like, "That was brave," or "Your speech really moved me." I could tell some of them wanted to ask what really happened, but they held back. Maybe they weren't ready to know. Eventually, I saw Lily walking toward me again, this time with less hesitation. Are you leaving? She asked, her voice small. Soon, I said. I wanted to say goodbye before I slipped out. Her eyes filled with tears again. I don't want you to slip out of my life. I studied her face, the girl who used to share my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who cried with me when our dog died, the young woman who started calling home less and less when college opened doors to a world beyond our mother's orbit. I don't want that either, I said honestly. But I can't keep pretending things are okay just to fit into Mom's version of this family. I know, she whispered. I should have fought harder for you. I should have insisted your name stayed on that list. I'm so sorry I didn't. I reached out and took her hands in mine. This isn't about a list, I said. It's about whether you're going to keep letting her decide who belongs and who doesn't. She closed her eyes, tears spilling over. I'm scared of her, she admitted. I hate that, but it's true. I spent this whole week terrified she'd freak out over something. I thought if I just agreed with her, everything would run smoothly. And how did that work out? I asked gently. She let out a choked laugh. Terribly, I squeezed her hands. Listen, I said, my voice soft but firm. You're starting your own family now. You and Ethan. At some point, you're going to have to decide whether you want to repeat what we grew up in, or build something different. She looked at me with wide, wet eyes like she knew I was right but didn't know how to start. I don't want to repeat it, she breathed. Then start small, I said. Start by telling the truth. To yourself, to your husband, to the people you trust. Start by not erasing the people who make you uncomfortable just because someone else tells you to. She nodded slowly, like each word was sinking deep into place. Will you stay in my life? She asked. Even if things take time to change? I smiled. Yes, but I'm not going to beg anyone to let me in anymore. I'll be here for you, but I'm done fighting for a seat at a table where my worth is negotiable. Her lips quivered. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, I replied. We hugged tight, and for a brief moment it felt like we were kids again, two girls in the same storm, clinging to each other instead of pretending the rain was just a little drizzle. When we pulled apart, She wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her makeup. Ethan came over and thanked me again for what I'd said during the toast. I hugged them both, whispered a final congratulations, and then I turned toward the exit. As I walked out of the reception hall, I felt my mother's stare burning into my back. I didn't turn around. I didn't need one last look. I already knew what I'd see: disapproval, anger, fear that her control was slipping. Outside, the night air was cooler. Crickets sang loudly, and the sky was a deep velvet blue, punctured by distant stars. My heels clicked on the stone path as I made my way to the parking lot. When I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door, the silence inside the car wrapped around me like a blanket. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and just sat there for a minute, breathing. I thought about all the times I've felt like I was standing outside my own life, looking in through a window at a family that seemed so picture-perfect from far away. I thought about the night my mother told me I didn't belong if I wouldn't play along. I thought about every time I'd chosen silence to keep the peace. Tonight, I hadn't torn everything down. I hadn't screamed or exposed every secret. I hadn't turned Lily's wedding into a battlefield. I had simply refused to disappear, and that was enough. There's a funny thing about life that I didn't really understand until this moment. What we allow becomes what we live. When we keep giving people the power to erase us, eventually we start erasing ourselves. But when we quietly, firmly choose to stand in who we are, even if our voice shakes, the world around us has to rearrange. Sometimes that rearranging looks like conflict. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a building full of people and realizing you finally stepped back into your own skin. As I started the car, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lily. "Thank you for coming," she wrote. "I'm going to call you after the honeymoon. I want to talk. Really talk. I promise I'm done pretending." I smiled, a real deep smile that reached places inside me I hadn't felt in a long time. I typed back, "I'll be here." But this time, I'm not disappearing to make anyone comfortable. On the drive home, the headlights cut a path through the dark highway. Trees blurred by on either side, and the city lights slowly faded behind me. I felt strangely at peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I finally stopped waiting for my family to decide I was worthy of being written into their story. I realized something else too. Belonging isn't about begging someone to write your name on their guest list. It's about accepting that your name already belongs to you. You can choose where it appears. You can choose who gets to say it with love. You can choose who never gets to erase it again. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the unwanted guest at your own family celebration, like someone quietly took your name off the list, you're not alone. I know how much that hurts. I know what it feels like to stand there, exposed, while someone with a fake smile tells you, "Sorry." But I also know this: you're allowed to put your name back into your own story. You're allowed to draw your own line, choose your own table, build your own kind of family, even if it starts with just you. And if this story resonated with you, if you saw even a small piece of your own life reflected in mine, I'd honestly love to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell your version. Let yourself be seen. Sometimes just putting your experience into words is the first step toward reclaiming it. If you're new here and these kinds of stories help you feel a little less alone, don't forget to subscribe. It really does make a difference and helps more people find these narratives. And if you ever feel like supporting this kind of storytelling a bit more, you can always buy me a coffee. It's a small gesture, but it means a lot and helps keep these stories going. Either way, thank you for staying with me until the end. Because in a world where some people will spend their whole lives trying to control the script, the bravest thing we can do is finally start telling the truth.